Good afternoon. The afternoon sessions are always a hard one to keep people's attention. I'm largely going to speak to Australia's bilateral interest in the region, with a focus also on some of our development priorities. Australia has a deep interest in the region for a range of reasons, including because of the growing people-to-people links. Over 1.5 million Australians claim South Asian heritage, and South Asians are the fastest growing migrant population in Australia. With approximately a third of Australia's population born overseas, India and Nepal are among the top 10 countries of birth for overseas born residents in Australia. And Nepali, for instance, is the third most frequently spoken language in the Australian capital, Canberra, as well as in other cities like Hobart and Darwin. Trade and investment links between Australia and the region are also expanding and deepening, in part because of the growing diaspora. This month, at the 7th Indian Ocean Conference, Nepal's Foreign Minister Nayaran South, together with Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong, witnessed and signed a trade and investment framework arrangement, a TIFA, a first of its kind between Nepal and Australia, which provides a strategic framework for dialogue on trade and investment issues. Ministerial and high-level visits from Australia to the region are also ramping up. The visit of Australia's Assistant Foreign Minister, Tim Watts, to Nepal last year was the first ministerial visit in 30 years. Minister Watts' visit was followed by a parliamentary delegation led by Speaker of Australia's House of Representatives, and it was the first parliamentary delegation in over 60 years to Nepal. Australia has a strong interest in the region and also in its security as well as its prosperity, and is working in partnership to respond to emerging developmental challenges, including those that impact Himalayan communities. Some of these challenges include depopulation of the mountain. This is a broad trend across the Himalayas in India, Nepal, and to a certain extent Bhutan. Nepal's 2021 census shows that there's an estimated 3% drop in the population living in the hills and mountains compared to 2011. The emptying out of the mountains will have consequences for local economies, for labor availability and wages, and indeed services that require scale, such as higher education or good hospitals. Whether and how to intervene to hold the population in the mountains will become a question for development planners as time progresses. Climate change and resilience building is also a growing challenge, not just globally, but particularly in mountain communities where climate impacts are felt more disproportionately. Given the fragile geology of the mountains, we can expect the worst of the impact of climate change to surface in the mountains. This will have impacts on agriculture, food security, disaster risk to population infrastructure, and livelihoods of particularly the poor and the marginalized communities. How to address this oncoming disaster is the other question we should be mulling over. Strengthening transboundary cooperation, which is clearly the theme of the whole forum, will be an important part of the solution to responding to this complex set of challenges. We know the architecture for regional cooperation in South Asia is the weakest compared to other regional blocs. Whether it is depopulation, migration pressures, sluggish local economies, failing farms, poverty, or the threat of climate change, the problems of the mountains tend to run across the Himalayas as well as across all borders. Given this context, anything that brings the countries to work together, whether it is trade or connectivity or regional cooperation on transboundary issues, such as disaster risk reduction or sharing of hydromet data or tourism, will help to bring greater knowledge, cooperation, and transboundary action to rescue of the mountain ecologies as well as communities. Australia is trying to assist in a number of ways. In Nepal, we are building the capacity of subnational governments through partners such as the Asia Foundation to tackle development challenges in a context-responsive manner and as locally as possible. We are working with partners such as ICIMOD to directly confront the impact of climate change through local governments and by engaging local actors. We are also trying to be helpful in strengthening transboundary cooperation on DRR and supporting programs like community-based flood early warning system that works on the Koshi River on both sides of the border, along with supporting green and resilient livelihoods. We are also committed to supporting regional platforms on climate actions, such as the HKH call to action through ICIMOD. Regionally, we have created platforms such as the South Asia Regional Connectivity Infrastructure Framework, SARIC, a partnership between the World Bank and IFC, which I believe you've heard about over the last 2 days, which is working on strengthening regional energy trade and other connectivity infrastructure by supporting the development of a pipeline of projects that connect economies in the region. Some of the examples include supporting Bhutan to plan and prepare for regional hydropower and transmission lines, supporting Nepal to identify high-impact air transport investments, practices, and policy change to improve domestic and regional connectivity, supporting South Asian governments to transition to market-based trade and development of a regional electricity market. Through the South Asia Water Security Program, working in India, Pakistan, Nepal, we are helping to tackle issues such as urban water supply, urban floods, and DRR. Australian agencies such as the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, ACR, and the Commonwealth Scientific and the Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, have a long track record of working in the region and promoting resilient farming systems, flood prevention, natural hazards mitigation, and reducing biodiversity loss. A key underlying theme to our partnerships and development efforts in the region is a focus on gender, disability, and social inclusion. Because if you just look at the gender dimensions, women are much more vulnerable to challenges that impact Himalayan communities, and they lag behind many of the indicators for the region. For instance, the average labor force participation rate in South Asia is 78.9% for men and only 39.9% for women. The gender pay gap is particularly pervasive in South Asia, with disparities of more than 30%. Adult women with disabilities are particularly vulnerable and at least 1.5 times more likely to experience physical and sexual assault, although the actual figure may be up to 10 times higher. On a final note, many of the challenges faced by the communities in the Himalaya are common across countries and they cross borders. And this is why it's important to create and build platforms for regional cooperation. Australia is committed to help strengthen regional architecture, linkages, and cooperations between institutions and individuals, including through our membership and active engagement in the Indian Ocean Rim Association. And we are also open to innovative ideas on how to promote these regional links and collaboration through our various investments. Thank you.